The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club. 20 international chess professionals compete in St. Louis as USChessChamps.com presents the second annual Winter Chess Classic. In the midst of World Championship fever, we bring you the Winter Chess Classic, where today the fields could be decided. So come on into the studio here, Studio B. Hello, chess fans. Ben Simon here, along with Grandmaster Jesse Kraai, also known by some other alias, I suppose.
Well, Ben, we were all inspired, when you went away to do the announcing, and we were jealous. I was jealous, and so they started calling me El Macho. And I kind of like it, so I've taken on, at least for today, I'm El Macho.
Spectacular. I can't wait to encounter this El Macho. So today, World Championship,
That's
Game
right.
3, it was a draw. Carlsen, Caruana. You said that these guys, you're very impressed because they've been playing fighting chess. Every game is exciting despite the draws. Give us your take.
Right, there's sometimes you can look at some games, even here in this tournament, there's a couple where it looks like there's some long theoretical thing and then it's just a draw. And then it feels like, as a fan, myself, I'm like, I don't know. And then other people are like, I don't know. And then there's a certain moment where you can feel like chess is dead or something. And I'm not seeing that, for the most part in the tournament, I'm not seeing that. And I'm definitely not seeing that in these games here.
And what you're looking at right now on the screen is a position from Game 3 earlier today.
Earlier today, that's right. And for chess fans out there, you probably know Sicilian hasn't been seen much recently. And this bishop b5 thing, we might see a lot of this, and it's a very interesting opening that honestly has a few similarities to the Berlin, where the white's going to be down a light square bishop in compensation for some pawn weaknesses. But here the queens do not instantly come off, in contrast to the Berlin. So it's a very rich maneuvering position. And let's look at what happened. There's a couple of interesting moments. I don't want to go through the whole game in depth, but I just want to say a couple key moments. The first is this queen c7, which was, it's a weird move, kind of actually very similar in my mind to Fabi's rook d8 in game 2, which was not only not a very well-known move, but it just didn't look right. And queen c7 doesn't necessarily look right because it's not clear that it actually wants or needs to go there. So Fabi, I thought, got a very pleasant position in contrast to Magnus. Simple chess, a3, b4, opening it up, and I didn't like this decision by Magnus. And so already I thought white had a very pleasant edge, and definitely after a5. The next critical moment, I want to say, really the big moment for Fabi to seize the initiative here was taking as he did. By the way, a5 is the kind of move which says, I don't feel good about my position, and I'm ready to suffer. I just want to shut it all down. B takes, rook takes, and here, I'm interested to see what Fabi will say in the press conference, but bishop d2 looks like it just wins the a file. You got to give me the a file, something like this. And instead of that, Fabi played queen b1, and now you got to do that with the a file. And nothing's going on.
Right.
So a lot of people said here, okay, it's just going to be a draw. But then one of the most amazing things about Magnus is he'll outplay you from nothing, from absolutely nothing here. And in this position, Fabi really starts to drift. And I was watching this with our tournament's own Eugene Perelshteyn, and we were like, oh no. Oh no, he's going to lose. And if you lose this position, it's going to be, it's going to be a heartbreak. So Fabi drifted and drifted and drifted here. And knight g5, this is the beginning of the torture. We're going to force the pawn to a dark square. And at first glance, it doesn't seem like it's at all meaningful. But after you start fixing it, you're like, oh, right, these are on dark squares. This is a dark square bishop, and these pawns could become a victim. And so definitely the next several moves, Carlsen was really on him. F5 and this was the move maybe that gave away the chances to play FE. Played in, Magnus still had a lot of time left coming up on move 40, but this was the critical moment. With king c6, I think he still puts great pressure on to Fabi. So in a lot of ways, similar to game 1, a kind of lucky escape for Fabi. And we're going to go into round 4 tomorrow, where we're going to see, will Magnus repeat? And I think he is. I think he's going to repeat the same line we saw in round 2, and this time not be afraid of weird moves like rook d8. Like, they are going to go through all the weird moves. And they're going to go through all of them and make sure they're ready for all of Fabi's weird. And really, what does Carlsen want? He wants a position like we had at the end of this game. Just some nice grind that he can get. And we have some of that going on in our tournament today.
Oh, spectacular. I want to remind you, tomorrow, for Game 4 of the World Championship, St. Louis's coverage begins at 11 a.m. Central Time, 2 hours after the beginning of the game, just so we have a little more bam content for you. USChessChamps.com, the same way you should be watching the Winter Chess Classic. So, over to the Winter Chess Classic. Let's take a look at our standings in Group A. After 7 rounds, just 2 left, Quesada in the lead by 1.5 points. So the situation here, if he wins, no matter what anyone else does, if he wins today, then he clinches this field. He leaves with the $6,000. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, and play will continue for first through tomorrow. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on his game. Now, Group B is a little bit of a similar situation. Zaban Andreasyan, the Armenian player, is a half point above the field. Now, he's playing Mikhailevsky today, Big Mick. If he wins and Perelshteyn in his game loses, well, then Andreasyan will clinch this field today. So it's possible in both fields. If you're just joining us, the tournament format, it's classical chess. It's a round robin, 2 of them. The time control is 90 minutes for the first 40 moves, and then 30 minutes for the remainder of the game. There is a 30-second increment for move number 1, so you always have to take notation. And the players may not agree to a draw before Black's 30th move to encourage fighting chess. Tomorrow, we begin 2 hours earlier. This is your reminder now. If we look at the schedule, 1 p.m. every day so far, the games have been beginning. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. is when it starts, Central Time. Our show will come on the air 2.5 hours later, as it always does. We will be with you at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. And you can watch it from beginning to finish at USChessChamps.com. Now, Jesse, the reason why we're beginning earlier tomorrow is because we're going to have playoffs if necessary, and so that's always exciting.
Right.
If we have to go to playoffs. But we may not have to. Let's take a look at our pairings in Group A. These are the games already in progress here at USChessChamps.com. Sasikiran versus Melkumyan, Shimanov versus Spirits, Zhang versus Miro, Motilev versus Robson. And Jesse, I understand you're going to be channeling your inner wrestling persona for this one.
In the blue corner, Quesada. Look at that eye. That comes from a bad accident. And Sevian, the young lamb. Will he be able to do any business there? I doubt it. We will see.
Indeed. Let's see. Let's take a glance at the game. This position looks pretty equal here. Is there any play for either side, Jesse?
No, it's interesting. So it's been kind of equalish the entire time here, but in this position with the weakened pawns, the lamb has some chances here. He also has a slightly better king. So let's back up just a little bit. Let's say we started this kind of current situation here, and my sense, just intuitively, was that bishop g4, so it looks good for white, right? Better development, knight on d5. That it seemed like after bishop g4, black was going to be able to mess up white's coordination enough to at least have equality. For example, after rook d2, I was expecting something like queen a5. Maybe there's some problem with that. I didn't see. Anyways, Quesada plays queen e8. One thing I've seen with Quesada in the analysis is that he doesn't mind playing out slightly inferior positions. He's not afraid, like most of us. I don't want a slightly inferior position. He really believes in his defensive capabilities. So let's look at how this endgame happened. Snip, snip, check to the miserable king, and then snip. And yeah, I think this is dangerous for Quesada. Normally we say that the bishop is the better piece in the endgame, but that's really when we have the potential for passed pawns rolling on either side. Whereas in this position, what my sensei Smyslov says is that in positions where the knight can blockade, or with local weaknesses, the knight is superior. And right away we can see what he's talking about here, where this is a nice blockading square for the knight, and this pawn is weak. And the king, the white king, is closer. So it'll be interesting if I get a chance to talk to Quesada after the game. I feel like this is dangerous for him, which would totally open up the tournament again if Quesada loses today.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that would make for pretty interesting tomorrow.
Right.
For certain. Okay, so these two actually met once before. It was actually 2016 Capablanca Memorial. The same colors. Quesada was able to defeat Sam Sevian, even younger than he is now, of course.
Right.
But Sam 2 years ago, I think he was about the same rating. Maybe he's a little bit higher now, but I don't think it was a significant difference. He's been a grandmaster since 2014.
Right.
So we'll see what happens in this game. Enough with the trivia. Okay, Group B pairings. Let's take a look at what's happening right now at uschesschamps.com. Hakobian versus Benjamin. Van Foreest versus Perelshteyn. Kevlishvili versus Gareev. Ali Morandi versus Theodoro. Okay, is he coming back here, Jesse? Is he coming back for this key matchup?
In the red corner, Big Mick. He's got such a nice face. Maybe you think he's your accountant, but no, it's not like that. The man will hurt you. I've been hurt by him. Many others have. They know the pain.
Oh, my.
And he's trying to put it onto the tournament leader right now, Andriazian, who's been playing real conservative chess. But when you're facing the Big Mick, it's like a bear, and you better be careful.
Okay, that was the most information in one of these previews we've had thus far. Let's take a glance at this very important Group B matchup, and here we go.
Yeah, in this position, I don't think Big Mick has anything to worry about. In fact, there's been several opportunities for Big Mick to just liquidate immediately into a pawn-up rook endgame that would be totally drawn by just playing rook c4 and snipping the thing. There's no way to not to defend it. And so Andriazian made a choice basically several moves ago to just say, I'm gonna play for equality here. So Big Mick, it is true. Like a lot of players wouldn't maybe try to make the opponent suffer here, but Big Mick is going to try to make you suffer. Maybe one thing I'll just point out that I was confused about, I could tell Big Mick was confused about too, is Big Mick played a dragon, an underrated opening by the way, and here Andriazian plays h3, which seems, I'm going to say, controversial in my limited understanding of this thing. After knight c6, bishop e3, Big Mick takes on e4, and that's kind of your standard trick that they teach you in school, after which I don't think he has any problems. The weird thing about h3 that I can't really wrap my head around is, in the game with Perelshteyn, it went like this. Perelshteyn played an accelerated dragon, and the test for the accelerated dragon is kind of this position here, and the question of what to do after bishop b3. And what Perelshteyn does is he goes queen a5, and this is a known way to avoid variations with h4, h5 getting mated. By threatening knight e4, you kind of force castles. Then in Perelshteyn play d6, and then h3. So this is kind of a known way for white to play to maybe get an edge. That game was eventually drawn. This, though, is significantly better for white than this setup here, right? Because you're just down time, because it's not clear that the queen actually wanted to be on a5. So it's almost like he was repeating this setup. And I think, honestly, even if black didn't have knight e4, he's still totally fine. But knight e4 is one of those liquidating moves. It's like, well, I guess the game's over now because d5 is going to happen. Big Mick didn't have to play bishop d4. There's other ways of doing it, too. And so, right, we just got this huge liquidation where black is up a pawn, he gives it back, and he's the one to enter into the white camp first. And so white is gonna have to suffer here. But this is clearly a draw. Clearly a draw, but it's good to see Big Mick making the guy suffer.
Right. I believe that Big Mick plays Ali Morandi tomorrow in the final round.
Okay.
Assuming, if this game ends in a draw, then, I mean, right now I'm really billing Zaban Andreassian. He's a half point ahead.
Right.
So Michalewski is still at the very top.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of interesting games tomorrow if this ends up in a draw.
No, this tournament has been wide open for a long time. I mean, Andreassian is only up +2. When you compare Quesada, he's up +4. He's up +4. So, and when you look at the rest of the field in Group A, there's everybody else is like +1 or -1 or -2. You know? So it's a totally different situation.
Well, we've got more developments in this round, but I want to let everyone know that you can join us on social media, #Winter Chess Classic, and of course, uschesschamps.com. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to see the digital board, uschesschamps.com is where you want to go to check it out. The YouTube chat seems to be down right now. I'm very sad about that, actually. We're just going to talk to some of you guys today, but who knows? Maybe it'll pop back up.
Right.
And if it does, ask your questions, and we'll keep our eye on the chat room. Okay, let's take a quick glance at the prize fund. Group A, very generous prize fund, $22,000. That $6,000 goes to the champion. And in Group B, $14,000 total prize fund, and $4,000 will go to the first place winner. Hey, they might have to go through playoffs to get that money. And what we should really start off with, Jesse, Group B game, Eugene Perelshteyn might be in trouble against Lucas van Foreest. And this is important for Perelshteyn, who is at the top of the leaderboard, one of the guys at the top in Group B.
Right. I'm staying in the same house with Eugene, with a couple other GMs, with Melkumyan and stuff. And Perelshteyn, even though he grew up like I did in the United States, totally different chess education than I had. He had all these top Russian trainers as a kid, all this stuff. I was just hearing these stories today. So it's, so different to think about the paths to GM, whereas I and most other American kids kind of did it by themselves. Perelshteyn had all these amazing coaches. Let's take a look. I thought Lucas van Foreest built up his position nicely. In this position, what I know Perelshteyn was going for when he played c6 is to say that the bishop on c4 actually just looks good, and we're going to shut it down with d5. But watch the way this goes. d5, bishop b3. This is a little clever, and the first tactical point is that if de, then knight g5, hitting f7, will recapture and we'll be doing great. So bishop g4, knight c3. I like it a lot. What Lucas is saying is, since you, black, are behind in development, you can steal my pawn here anytime you want. You can just have it. Anytime you want, I'm going to give you multiple chances to have it. And I'm going to say, anytime you take it, my position's going to open. So e6, h3, the pawn on d4 is just continually hanging. And because Perelshteyn has the chess education I was talking about, he's doing a thing that, I don't know if you remember this, but when he won against Timur, it was a very similar structure. He gave up his light square bishop, put all his pawns on light squares, and so I can tell he was thinking the exact same thing here. But Lucas played a very nice way, a very nice couple moves to shut down, well, to make this wall. Let's call this the wall here. Now this wall is aimed at stopping this bishop on b3, the unopposed light square bishop. And in a lot of ways, the question of the game is, can this bishop become active? Can the wall somehow be made weaker? And watch what he does. Bishop g5, he doesn't care. You can take the pawn anytime you want on d4. castles, rook e1. And this is the clever point, is that we are threatening a tactic with something like takes and then takes with a pin onto the queen. That's the tactic we're threatening. And it's so annoying that Perelshteyn plays f6. And I know he didn't want to do that, because now this diagonal and the power of the bishop has become a little bit more relevant. And of course you don't want to block in your bishop on g7. So this was the first sign of Perelshteyn having some grief. We played some nice developing moves. And in this position, I think it's fair to say Lucas has a reasonable advantage. And what I want you to see is he's now looking at this diagonal. f4, the bishop is terrible, but there's now problems on the light squares. There he comes. This is what we all try to do. We try to trade it all off. But queen h5, very nice. And the point is, when you take, my knight is freeing the bishop and dreaming of coming here. This knight is out of play. And the dream is, we have to get this guy in for us to be successful. If we can either win g5 or pop it open with h4, he will at least be doing something. Queen e8, king f1, very simple and strong. Knight f3, and this is a desperation move here, c5, knight g5, and I don't think my friend Eugene's going to live through this one. It looks way too strong. Since this guy's going to collapse, if this guy gets active, that's it. This guy's out. The white king significantly better than the black king. So a very convincing manner of play from Van Foreest, and kind of from a preparation standpoint, it's interesting because Perelshteyn told me before the game, he's like, my strategy is whatever he does, I'm just going to play g6. I don't want to face any of his preparation. So, and he did. He got a totally original position, but he got outplayed. Yeah. Outplayed mostly because of the development advantage.
Big news, Jesse,
Yeah.
here in Group A.
Sure.
Jeffrey Zhang and Miro have drawn their game, which substantially, if I'm thinking correctly, changes the storyline at the very top with Quesada. If Quesada draws now, he wins Group A, I believe.
Well, Jeffrey was only at +1 at that point, right? At this point. So there are a couple other people at +1. I mean, it's going to be very hard to catch Quesada. I think already, even before the round, it was almost impossible. The guy has +4, and the next person had +1.
Well, Sasikiran, I guess, would be the only one, right?
Doesn't he also have +1?
Sasikiran is at 4 out of 7 right now. Yes, +1.
Yeah.
So,
So
but
it's pretty hard.
he's the only one.
He's the only one left,
mathematically.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, I want to say one thing that's interesting about this game is Miro has been playing very conservative chess just to try to not get wiped out by people. And to a certain extent, it's worked. He's lost 2 games, but he has been, even in those games, he was, essentially, I felt, holding. If you look what he did in the opening, he played a sideline of the, I guess it's fair to say Jeffrey played the sideline here. But here we got this position, and he was content to just suffer here. A little bit worse of a position. And, it's not sexy or anything like that to play this way. But this is actually the kind of play you would expect Magnus and Fabi to be playing as black. Right? This is what a lot of black players have trained themselves to do. Right, to sit and suffer and just take it and then try to play with the white pieces. But we're not seeing that. So this is like a vision of what, top-level chess used to look like, the non-fighting, with the black pieces style. But this is how it looks. You suffer a little bit, and you have some small advantages. But a guy as talented as Jeffrey can't break you down. And even here, it looks like Jeffrey has some chances. But look, Miro's just like, I'm going to shut it all down, and I'm going to trade some stuff off, and then what do you want? All right? Yeah. Okay, so Miro does it again, and Jeffrey, let's just say, I mean, I was really high on his play in the first 2 rounds, and even after that, I thought he had a lot of good games. He hasn't been playing badly. The key game, in a lot of ways, was yesterday's, where he sacked a pawn against Quesada, and I thought he was fine, but Quesada's genius so far this tournament has really been outplaying people in a Magnus Carlsen kind of way with a slow, easy grind. And it's been tough. The guy's been really hard to, present any problems with once he gets in the position of just being able to defend. So you don't think about it, but right, a defensive player is now the one who's +4.
Right.
Right?
Well, that's one of his trademarks for certain.
Yeah.
Let's take a look. I mentioned Sasi.
Yeah,
And
let's
let's
take a look.
at his game, since now it is of immense importance. Sasi versus Hrant Melkumyan in Group A.
And one thing that's interesting about this is I mentioned that the Rosalimo has a lot of similarities with the Berlin, and this is a Berlin here. And one thing you see here is that white is technically up 2 pawns, but the whole idea of this opening for black is to open the bishops. And as you can see, they're pretty amazing, the bishops. And this pawn is probably going to fall someday, though not necessarily. And one of these pawns we can easily imagine falling too. Melkumyan's been thinking a long time on this present move. In fact, he's just played rook d8. Looks sensible to me. And then rook e1 happened. Yeah. So I'm anticipating now that Melkumyan is thinking about something like b4, though there's no rush to do it. I thought it was interesting. One of the things that's been enlightening to me about Melkumyan's play and modern chess in general is he has outprepared all of his opponents in this tournament. And I was watching the game in the tournament hall earlier, and in this position, he played knight h4. So, in the Berlin, people think of it as a kind of boring open, but I don't think of it that way. I think it's very rich and interesting. And knight h4 has been played several times before. Sasi wasn't, you could tell he wasn't totally prepared for it. And what I meant to say with the preparation at the highest levels now is Melkumyan's using a very powerful computer that he accesses, like through the cloud.
Right.
Right? And, so back in the day, all of us GMs would just use our normal computer. And he's got access to this supercomputer who's like doing some deep analysis for him. And so when I watched him, Sasi was thinking here, and Melkumyan's just blitzing out all his moves. The f6, he blitzed out. Bishop f4, king f7, he blitzed out. Rook g8. So all of this, it's a real bummer when you're white. All of this is already, trodden territory for him here. And again, it's kind of a trademark of the modern Berlin players is they are very comfortable sacrificing a pawn or two as long as they get their bishops out, like he has here. But, this could still go either way. The pawn on h6 isn't dead yet, and we haven't exactly proven what we are intending to get in this position for black. Notice, though, it's very hard to figure out how white is supposed to improve his position. Like, how is this terrible knight even supposed to move? And what do you really even want to do with this pawn? So, I believe in black's position here, but we're at the stage of the game, and we're going to see this in the Carlsen match too, is that sure, you can have some opening preparation, and you're going to get some position that's rich and interesting, and you kind of understand it, but then you still have to play move for move. You still have to come up with ideas, and this is tricky. This is tricky, so we're going to keep our eye on that. And let's just do a thought experiment. Let's say Sasi wins. He goes +2. So the scenario is Sasi wins this one, and then tomorrow, and then Quesada loses today, and then tomorrow, and then they're going to be then they have to do a playoff.
Well,
right?
Hold on. So Sasi has 4 points right now. Quesada
right.
has 5.5.
Right.
Sasi wins today. Quesada loses.
Yeah.
Quesada's still half point over him.
Right, so the same thing has to happen the next day, too. Right, that's how I guess.
There's So the
It's
last round,
impossible.
if the same thing happened again, Sasi wins, Quesada loses, well then Sasi wins outright.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the games that is really interesting positionally that I'm looking at is Group A, Modila versus Robson.
Okay.
There are 2 passed pawns on the E file, and I don't think they can ever promote. This looks crazy. What is going on here, Jesse?
I've been looking at this game for a while, and one thing we've seen from Motilev, who is really known as a fantastic attacking player, is that he is also playing. He is the example of a guy who is playing against these very cautious E4, E5 games. I think basically all of his white games have been E4, E5, and then going down some theoretical line where he clearly understands the position really well, but it's still so hard to crack. And then what you do is you're going to get some position like this where it's your knowledge of endgames and maybe, let's call it subtle tactics, is going to win the game. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on. In principle, I feel like black should be okay because the pawns, although, nice, they don't seem all that threatening.
The time difference is pretty staggering. Now, the players only have a few more moves to make until the time control, but still, I mean,
that's right.
Over half an hour.
Let's just say the natural move, I'll just throw that out there. That seems to me the natural move. And then black can think about things like king g7, f6. But clearly, Robson is reflecting on what the intentions of rook d1 are and if there's some trick involved in rook d1. Yeah. Another really interesting game is this game with Shimonov against Siertz. And let me pull up one position here that I thought was really interesting. This was one of these e4, e5 games that look like they're nothing special. White plays knight a3. I'm sure he could have done knight bd2, for example. But black says to himself, okay, the knight is on a3, away from the king's side, so that's my cue to ask a question with the move g5. And g5 is always going to be controversial in these positions and always very tactical and hard to evaluate. And one thing that's interesting, the positions are always a little bit different. Like if the knight were on d2, I think white would be winning this now after what Siertz did, and he played knight g5. And one thing about this move is you can't really calculate it out now. There's just going to be a long struggle, and both sides are still going to make mistakes.
Breaking news here, Jesse, in Group B, Eugene Perelshteyn has lost as black to Lucas van Foreest. So Lucas van Foreest looking very good, still one of the top leaders in Group B, and we will see how he can perform tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe we'll even get him in the studio. Huh?
Yeah, I'd love to have Lucas van Foreest in here again.
So yeah, well, king g7, queen f3. Who would you rather be in this position?
White.
You'd rather be white. Okay.
I feel better as white. I mean, do you agree with me?
Well, it's funny because the reason to be suspicious, actually, of white is that the knight is way over here, right? That's why I was saying if the knight were closer, I could really imagine, the power being unleashed upon this pin here, which is clearly what white's on about. It's also, let's just say something obvious, it's hard to get f4 in because of this guy, and that's really who you need. You need your friend the rook onto the knight to make black really squirm.
I suppose I can't really do anything with queen g3.
Queen g3 is definitely going to be a thought, yeah. But for example, after rook h8, I think queen g3, I might be able to get away with knight h5.
Okay.
Right. But big struggle here happened. I'm sure mistakes were made on both sides. And in the end, black gave the piece back, which I don't think he had to do. Nevertheless, this position that's arisen seems very favorable to black, at least on the first glance. And the reason is that the white king is going to get nailed, and this bishop is still very strong. So white needs some good moves right now. I assume we're going to have to do something like rook e1 and then king runs for the border. You know, something like that. So I'm very interesting game. And maybe, you know, I didn't analyze it too much, but maybe actually a good practical sign from, or good practical move by Sweerts to give back the piece to get a position like this where you're at least out of the bind. You know, you're not going to lose anymore. Okay, let's just run through our other games.
Robbie Kevlishvili.
Yeah.
Can we glance at that for a
Sure.
second? Robbie Kevlishvili versus Timur Gareev. Gareev looks like he's about to be taken out of contention for consideration of first place, you might say, in Group B. So both the players have made time control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's happening here? Is Gareev going to lose a piece on h6? It was rook f6 and then king d7. Looks like he's going to lose a piece. I was certain, by the way, earlier that Gareev had a body slam. Body slam. El Macho saw a body slam earlier. And how about this? I'll just show you this body slam, and you tell me if you think it's right. So, GF. First of all, the Kevlishvili's opening was going, I thought, fine, until, you know, I don't know if you remember this game against Joel, where Joel also played queen a5, and the queen left her man. And this was actually like the moment to, coming up here, there was the moment of truth where after rook f3, I think is a blunder, Gareev could have gone off the top rope here and played f4. It's a very natural move, honestly. It doesn't feel that complicated, because you want to look to see if your queen can do something over here by sacking the pawn. And the point is after bishop f4, this is nasty. You can't go back with the rook because your friend the bishop's there, right? And if you go this way, oh no, queen d4 and queen a1 falls. This is all because the queen's over here on an adventure. And if you take with a rook, then I play queen h3. I'm hitting the bishop and the pawn. Let's say the queen comes back. c3, might as well mess with the queen. And then smack. Bam. Looks miserable. Looks absolutely terrible.
So this did not happen.
This didn't, I think, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think Gareev really missed a chance here.
Because more than a body slam, this looks more like a triangle choke, armbar, pick your poison combination.
Yeah, that's right.
But sometimes you wriggle out of those.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was any wriggling.
Yeah.
So, you know, they continued on, big time pressure hit, and then we got this position. And unless I'm, you know, losing my mind, it looks like rook g6 takes and takes. That looks like a piece to me. Right? That just looks like a piece. And White's king, in addition, is safer. So there's not a lot of grief for White in this position.
Now, the two pawns on A and B, are they of concern, or is White just chill?
I wouldn't be that concerned, but you know what? Check this out. In this position, anyways, he said no. I want to play rook f7 instead. And honestly, that's also incredibly evil, because so rook g6 was a simple way, but Kevlishvili is saying, you know what? I'm going to snip this pawn. And when I do that, I have two threats. I'm going to hit your bishop, and I've just undermined your rook.
Right.
Oh. So Timur misses a big chance, and looks like he's going to go down here after rook f7.
You can't really see their faces right now in the video, but I think we could all get it on the first guess which player is Timur, colors aside. Look at those checkered pants, man.
Yeah.
Oh, the hat, too. Look
You
at
know,
that.
one thing we know about trivia is those are the same pants with which he jumped out of the airplane.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
and then yesterday he was also wearing like the full suit, the full checkered suit.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, let's run through a couple of these games.
Also, Jacobian has just defeated Joel Benjamin in Group B. So a lot of decisions coming
Joel.
down the pike in B.
Joel's having a really rough time, man.
Right.
Really rough time. let's look at what happened. I thought Joel was fine the last time I looked. They played this opening, and Joel was doing his normal dance. I thought he was fine through all of this. Let's see. Well, I take it back. In this position, he's no longer fine. He's suffering a little bit because of the isolated pawn. And there it goes. He's going to lose the pawn. And it's pure suffering now. Oh, major bummer. Man, the night dance. Oh. So, Benjamin, it's really rough to be, I'll just say it as an old guy, it's rough to be an old guy and come back and have to play these kids. It's really tough. It's really tough, and, it's really sad. I mean, I think, too, once you start losing, it just gets in your head, and he's had several bad results in a row. And a couple, he played Big Mick, and he was totally winning against Big Mick. And then Big Mick, of course, he's a hard guy to actually beat, and he ended up drawing that game. And that was one of the many bad, it wasn't a defeat, but it was a psychological defeat for him. Yeah.
I wonder if Joel had any expectations coming back to St. Louis for this event, or what they were. He's a humble guy. I mean, I really enjoyed talking to him before the event, but
I don't think. I mean, in the best possible way. When I say this, I don't think he's a humble guy.
Oh, really?
I mean, maybe when he talks to you, but I mean...
Maybe he was just being nice to me.
No, I mean, the guy is a U.S. champion several times over. He believes in his chess, and, this is terrible to have to suffer defeat like this.
Right.
Yeah. He was one of America's top players.
Yep.
Yeah.
87, 97, 2000. Those were the 3 years he won it. Right. And one of those years, I think it was 97, he was the sole champion. The other two, he was a two-way tie and then a three-way tie.
Uh-huh. Right.
Three-way tie for the U.S. Championship. How could they? How dare they?
Can we look at Big Mick? Because he might be looking to come off the rope here. When we left it, it was something like this, and it looked like, I'm sure Andreazian believed that this was going to be holdable with no problems, and it should be. But right around here, things start getting weird. GF H4, Rook E7, and notice Big Mick isn't even taking that pawn on B4. This pawn, by the way, to Big Mick, for a guy like Big Mick, that pawn's just a spectator. It's not a real pawn because we can take it any time. Big Mick says check to the miserable king, Rook F3, King G2, and Big Mick says, all right, I'll take on F4, and I mean, come on. It has to still be a draw. But this is what I mean by Big Mick. He's going to keep playing and playing and playing, right? Andreazian is now looking to play Rook F3 next. And yeah, it should be a draw. But this is what I'm saying, about Big Mick. He's never going to give up. All right. That would, of course, really shake things up if Big Mick were to somehow win this thing.
Well, no doubt, yes. Yeah. And the people who follow this event are pretty familiar with Big Mick. The winner of Group B before, actually back in the Summer Classic. And we've really taken a liking to him, and he is someone who will keep playing. He won't give up.
Right.
What else? Okay, here, Group A, key matchup, Sevian Quesada. What has changed here?
So, yeah, let's go through it. This was where we left it. Black activates the king. And yeah, this is all textbook stuff. We're going to, we're going to control C5, and we're going to bring our knight over there. So the bishop is going to have a hard time controlling Mr. Knight, who's running around. And, for a guy like me, it feels like it should be a torture situation. For Quesada, the guy's interesting. He might, whether right or wrong, I think his attitude is just like, I'm fine. I think that's his attitude. It might be the wrong attitude, but I think that's his attitude here. It is dangerous, that the knight gets to dance around on all the colors, This is a dogmatic but very important statement. The knight gets to dance around in all the colors, and the black bishop only ever gets to talk to 32 squares, right?
True that.
Yeah. So like that pawn on a7, pawn on c6, all those squares on the king side, whereas white just needs to control g3. There's no real counterplay here, right? So I still like Samuel's position, and that would be a big win for him. He hasn't had the most luck, let's call it that way, in this tournament. Let's check out Shimonov.
And while you do that, one of our top performers in Group B, with his victory today, Lucas van Foreest, is ready for an interview, so we'll bring him in.
Great. Yeah, while he's coming in, I'll show you guys this game with Shimonov and see if there's any chance for him surviving here. Rook h5, we left it somewhere around here. Rook fe1 is predicted, and black doesn't even take the pawn on g5, instead says, I'll do it this way, and let's think about this position. Black is obviously up a pawn, but what Shimonov has done well for himself is that he now at least has a little bit of counterplay against the black king. So maybe Shimonov can hold on to this. If black wants, it looks like he can always do queen c1 and queen f4. All right, I have Lucas van Foreest in the studio with us, who is now at, what are you at, +2?
+1.
+1, yeah. All right. Very nice game today. Even though you're playing my friend and, you know, the guy who lives across the hall from me. Let's go through this. One thing I was telling the fans is, rightly or wrongly, he was kind of didn't want to face any of your preparations, so he's just like, I'm going to play g6.
Yeah.
He ain't got an original game. Right?
Yeah, it's actually the move that I have a very bad score against. So it's the only move I score below 50% in, so it's a logical decision. But
Sure. Now, did you...
No, I did not prepare this at all.
You just played it.
Normally I play with c3, some very solid stuff, but like, it's not an advantage probably for white, and he probably prepared some stuff. So I thought I would go for something new. He probably doesn't know a lot too.
So you'd seen this somewhere before?
Yeah, I knew it was an opening, but that was about it.
Because I actually I remember flirting around with this, you know, when I had my malaise and tried to play e4, which was a big mistake. But you know, I think what his reaction was, no, you can't actually put the bishop there because I'm just going to hit you.
Yeah,
right.
But
it's not so simple.
No, it's not so easy. I mean, the main line is just knight f6, queen e2, castle, and this is supposed to be fine for black.
Right.
And this, I was not sure, like, I feel I should be better here. I mean, bishop g4 is logical. He just wants to, like, close the structure and claim that he has exchanged his bad bishop.
Right, and I don't know if you remember the game that Perelshteyn had against Timur, where it was almost a very similar structure. He changed off the light square bishop and played e6 and put all his pawns on light squares. So I think that was probably going through his mind when he played bishop g4 here.
But it seems positionally good, but actually it's really risky. Like if, let's say, he puts all of his pawns on white, the dark squares can get very weak.
Yeah, of course. Now, let's just say for the fans out here that, well, let me do two moves here, a couple of moves actually, and look at this position. I really admired that you just let the d4 pawn hang all the time. That was like it's been hanging for a while.
Yeah, but it's not hanging. Okay, it's hanging, but if he takes on d4, I will take on d5.
Right.
And I will just put a knight on d5, sacrifice it, and.
Yeah, no, I thought this was great because you really need to keep the center fluid, right?
Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't need to. Like, I could also play with e5. Like maybe knight c3 wasn't the best move. What he said is just knight d2 and c3.
Oh, maybe.
But I wanted to keep the center somewhat open,
right?
Just so that I have the bishop pair, some development advantage.
And so I stared at this for a while because I thought at first when I was up there, I was like, oh, maybe Eugene got what he wanted here. But on the other hand, you were able to create very quick problems after his natural move with knight e7. And then I thought on knight f6, I assume bishop g5?
Yeah, the spin is really painful.
And then if he can make, I was thinking like if you can make his white pawns move in any way, right, then your bishop will then come alive.
Yeah.
And that seemed like your whole strategy, which works out because after knight e7, bishop g5, castles rook e1,
Yeah.
he has to do something.
Yeah, he has to make this f6 weakness because I'm just threatening to take on d5.
Right.
And knight takes d5.
And I thought here, yeah, you were better. Now
Yeah.
it's clear that you're better.
I thought for like a few minutes I was just winning. I mean, I thought I have bishop pair, more space, and his position is full of weaknesses. But actually, the position is not that easy because my bishop on b3 is not really placed perfectly. The knight on c3 is actually not doing that much. And if he is able to just keep this solid, then it's not so easy for me to proceed.
Oh, I think this is a dream, though. This is a dream.
Yeah, I
right?
was happy. I was happy. Yeah.
Maybe bishop f4. I don't know.
Yeah, bishop f4 was maybe better.
Yeah.
I should have actually went for that.
But okay, bishop h4. This is a very sad knight placement. I don't know where that guy's going.
Yeah, well, it's going to c7. It wants to go to c7. And
Right.
if it goes to d7, I have queen g4.
So here's already a point, I guess, where you should have played bishop. A reason to play bishop f4, because here you're playing bishop g3, right?
Yeah, so it was probably a bit more accurate to start with bishop f4.
And then you do an interesting thing here. Tell us about knight e2.
Yeah, so I was just thinking that, okay, I have two pieces that are not placed perfectly, the bishop on b3 and the knight on c3, so I will just reroute my knight to d3 and c3, bishop c2. So that's just the plan. And yeah, because these are just my only two bad pieces.
Right. And here I thought you were dreaming about maybe takes and c4 or maybe c4 directly.
Yeah, it's actually, maybe it's a plan here, but after what he did, it's probably not that great. Although it's possible.
Yeah. So g5, let's just say, he's trying to get some space for his knight, but really controversial because now the light squares are open over there even more.
Yeah, he's weakening his pawn structure, but his pieces are somewhat coming alive, so I expected this move. It looks normal.
Right.
But I think I'm better.
No, for sure. And, maybe there's something, the computer would find something better than what you did, but knight c1, yeah. Actually, one of the funniest things at the tournament for me was we were talking in the Blitz room in the Skittles room upstairs, and you said this thing like, you're imitating us old guys. You're like, these young kids today, all they can do is calculate. And knight c1, that's a nice positional move. The knight needs to get fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he needs to get fixed. Okay, so
Yeah.
Perelshteyn plays f5.
Yeah. Otherwise, he just needs some counterplay.
He needs some
he's
space,
opening up.
yeah. Calm move. And this is nice, too, because c4, you could have done c4, too, but it's really the weaknesses on this diagonal that are juicy, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. And the knight and the e5 square is really
Right.
key.
And so it's like this move feels right because he's going to block your bishop out, but that it really is now the gateway for your bishop now.
But I think it's the best move because otherwise I go bishop e5 myself.
Right.
And now he at least has something because his bishop on h2 is out of play.
That's right.
But my light square bishop is really starting to get into play here.
And here he does a thing that I've seen Casada do in this tournament, and I've seen Miro do in this tournament, and that is, let's trade off all the rooks.
Yeah, I didn't like this at all. I thought I was just winning here after queen h5.
Yeah, what do you think you should do?
Yeah, okay, I think I'm better anyways. But maybe knight c7, because this is the only piece that isn't really playing, and then just getting it into to e6.
I assume queen h5?
Yeah, queen h5 and knight e6. And let's say I go h4, you will just take it, and with g takes h4.
Oh,
And here rook e2, maybe f3. So the position is not that clear. Okay, I'm better, of course, but
right.
maybe bishop d1, if it's working.
Bishop, yeah, you have a lot. Well, is there a thing in Dutch called a luxury choice?
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How do you say it? I'm trying to learn new words.
But you're Dutch too, right?
My last name's Dutch, but that's like my grandfather from
Ah.
a long time ago. And he wasn't even Dutch himself. It's just like a Dutch community here in America.
The settlers.
Yeah.
Well, there's not like one word which you can say like this a sentence or something.
Oh, okay.
It's not something special.
Anyways, we don't have that word, so I'm trying to bring it into English, the luxury choice.
Okay, yeah. But I cannot come up with it. But it's there. Yeah.
Okay. So he trades off all the rooks, and you just say, okay, queen h5.
Yeah.
And now, unfortunately, he's really going to help your pieces here by taking on e1.
Yeah, and just so now my knight can maybe come to f3, and my bishop is playing. So, yeah, I thought it was just over here.
One thing that's always satisfying for an old guy like me is when you have the plan of the unopposed bishop that begins really once you get this position, so on move 9.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And black is like, no, I'm going to build the wall.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, many, many moves later, we're going to get this position.
Yeah.
And it's just like, uh-oh, where did the wall go?
Yeah.
It's really a drag.
Like Kasparov said that even the worst bishop is better than the best knight.
That's right, yeah.
Because at some point this bishop is getting into play, and it's just much better than the knight on a6.
And I'm just going to assume that that's lost here.
Yeah, c5 was just a desperate attempt. It's logical, but you're never defending. You have too many weaknesses on the queen side. g5 is weak, g6 is weak. I will come with h4 or g3, and my king is just totally safe.
And your bishop's going to come back out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just
That's
then
the
it's
Yeah, that was his only trump.
Yeah, that's the only thing he had, and it's quite important. I mean, if I don't get it into play, then he has something to play for. But here, okay, it's over.
All right, well, great game, and I think let's just while you're here, let's take a look at the Mikulewski game. It seems like it's got to be a draw.
Wow, he's pushing.
But he's always pushing. Big Vic will always push. So let's assume that's a draw, and Andreasian will be +2, and you've got +1, so you still have a shot at it tomorrow.
Yeah, actually, for me, it doesn't matter who wins, because if Mikulewski wins, he's on +2, and Andreasian is on +1.
That's true.
But it seems like he can really try here with 2 rooks. It's not winning, but it's tricky.
he's gonna make him suffer. Yeah.
Yeah, just like Carlsen against Caruana, in the first game.
Yeah.
Just 7 hours.
Though not today. I thought Carlsen was really gonna push him today, but he didn't.
Yeah, but it was too drawish, too much.
Towards the end, don't you think there was like some chances there?
Yeah, okay, but Fabi is not that bad.
Okay, hold on. Let me show you the position, because now we got you here. So
Well, I didn't watch the end, so maybe it
was like this position.
Yeah.
This is what he got, and I was like, oh, I don't know. There's a lot of ideas here with f4, g5 sometime. I thought this was like a dream for Carlsen. Yeah, this is what...
Yeah.
If Big Mick had this position, he would have beat Fabi. Big Mick's good at this stuff.
But like you're missing pieces to attack. Like if you would put some pair of rooks on it, you would have.
Of course, it'd be nice, but you can't have everything.
No, but here the problem is just that white doesn't have any weaknesses, right?
Well, but imagine when f4 comes, there's going to be some problems with
then
f4.
e5 can become weak too, like.
Yeah, of course. But anyways, in the game, it kind of petered out after this, and then there turned out there really wasn't much. You just sat on the position.
You do have a bishop, but
Yeah, you got the bishop. Well, good luck tomorrow. Thank you for coming down, and don't forget, we're early around tomorrow.
yeah, 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We're going to go to a break.
A moment comes in chess when you need to test yourself at a different level. Chess 24 Premium offers the tools that you need to reach your maximum potential. From hundreds of interactive video lessons to becoming part of the Chess 24 community. You can analyze with friends or coach your students live. You get 24/7 coverage of chess news and events, access to premium analysis and commentary, and the chance to interact with grandmasters and other top players and coaches. Get advice from the best and even challenge them to a battle. Be the best chess player you can be. It's time to level up your game with Chess 24 Premium membership.
That was an amazing piece of calculation. He easily dominated his rivals, winning game after game. The opposition has never been as heated, as fierce over elite chess tournaments in the world.
Hello and welcome back to round 8 of the 2018 Winter Chess Classic. My name is Ben Simon, and here with Grandmaster El Macho Jesse Kraai, we're here calling the action going into the final stretch of this event. Now, all but one of the games are over in Group B, and we are guaranteed to go and see who the winner of the field will be tomorrow, but chances still exist for this thing to be clinched in Group A. So let's start with our key matchup in Group A, Quesada's game against Sam Sevian. Sevian is white.
Right, and as we left it, I was saying that it seemed like black should be suffering. It still seems like the case, but as I said then, Quesada is not afraid of a slightly worse position. This one would make me personally afraid. They've just exchanged these pawns on g5, and it looks like fg is also going to happen. And so the problem for white really in executing the weaknesses here is it would be nice if my king could get active and didn't have to babysit this pawn on g3. But even so, the knight's going to start dancing. In particular, we're going to see a move like knight c8, and once this pawn comes to h6, then I can come back around and maybe come to knight c5 amongst other squares, where, you know, if the pawn falls, that's it. So, yeah, very dangerous position in my view for Quesada, but as I said before, Quesada, he doesn't mind. He doesn't mind. It doesn't have a lot of the same fears that other people have, and that's probably why he's at +4 in this event. Yeah, Samuel's thinking about fg5. I don't know, maybe mildly considering f5, but that would truly be a weird attempt. Yeah, so he took the pawn, and we're going to get king takes g5, and then we're going to see if Samuel's able to put some pressure on. The natural move is knight c8, but then, you know, I'm sure Samuel's thought about that and then thinking about how it would look after that. Let's just play a couple natural moves and see what happens. Knight c8, a6, knight b6. Well, yeah. And so I'm really threatening to go in what probably is a winning pawn endgame because these guys are outside passed pawns. So let's say you run for the border. Knight a4, and you better run back now, but it's not so easy. In fact, there's no way to run back. If you run back bishop e4, knight c5, you can't even get to bishop b3. So this is the kind of grief I'm talking about. Knight c8 is on the board. It's hard to imagine a well, you got to play a6, right? And that's what happened. And right, knight b6 looks pretty. It's definitely there might be something fancier, but that's going to put real question marks onto the position. Now, here's an idea that was better than the last variation anyway for black. Knight b6, bishop b3, and there's going to be more than one move for white, but let's just look at knight d7. And now you can always play bishop c4 in response to knight c5. But some definite grief, and several thoughts here for white is like, if I get my knight on e5, I could actually prevent you from coming to g4 and then play king e3, king d4. So knight b6 is on the board. And here we go. If you're an old man, what you've probably done is you've graduated from studying openings to studying endgame studies. And this is really starting to look like an endgame study where the knight could do some serious domination against the bishop. It's not actually, a lot of beginners when they see the bishop, they're like, I want the pawns in the same color as the bishop so that they can protect the pawns. But it's really a bummer because now they're in the way of the bishop. And Samuel, I think, should be able to do several ideas here which will make the black suffer. And the first thing he does, he just steps away from the board because black is now the one who's really going to have to go into a deep think to think about how to save the game. He cannot prevent the knight coming from C to C5 though. For example, on bishop E6, bishop B3, there's knight D7, and on bishop E6 I can go to knight A4. Now that doesn't mean to say that like the bishop, you know, well, that knight c5 is necessarily the knockout blow. There might be even other ideas for white. And that's just the general dilemma for black. Now, there's so many different things that white can do with the knight. And black is going to be kind of in a static holding pattern. My own chess sensibilities would be rewarded if Quesada lost. Not just because I want Quesada to lose or anything, but just because it seems like he gets away with stuff, like especially the game against Shamanov. Yeah. The thing he got away with there, I looked at him with both of the players afterwards, and the fact that he felt no danger, I was like, you can't do it.
Right.
So bishop e6 was played, and as I said before, knight a4 is the natural move, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's another one. One reason that I can imagine bishop e6 being better than bishop b3 is that on bishop b3, let's say knight d7, in addition to threatening knight c5, there was that variation knight e5 at some point, which really might be good to stop the counterplay of the king coming to g4, and that would allow me to maybe do something like king e3, d4. So very promising position. We'll come back in a little bit. Now I'm going to show you a position I really don't understand. And this is the Robeson position, where it's equal material. Black won that annoying pawn on e6, but in a way that might have been a good thing for Modulev, because now at least the rook on e3 is communicating with the pawn on e7. And Robeson is saying, my rook on d6 is creating a very annoying pin against the knight on d4. Another move he could have done is some kind of rook f7 business. But rook d6, why not? That looks annoying. And a simple threat that he's created now is rook d4 followed by knight f5. And yeah, so actually maybe Robeson has a little something there. Maybe Modulev pushed too hard, which can often happen, right, in these positions where you're really going for it.
I would rather have black in this situation. I mean,
Yeah.
Just because at the very least the G and the H pawns are together, the F and the H are not for white.
Right.
I mean, nothing's going to become of the E pawn, right?
Well, black hopes it will come with the pawn. But it's also true, like black at some point too, this is a pretty simple move to make.
Right.
Right? That's going to be coming. I might just scoop it up. No, I'm with you. I think the more you look at it, it's like, well, and not only that, but white has some just sincere tactical problems with this knight on d4. Yeah, because knight f5, I don't know how you stop it. I'm going to guess that rook d6 was a move that Modulev overlooked, and we're just out of time pressure here, so that could have been, something that wasn't on his horizon. All right, let's take a look. Most of our games in Group B are over, except Michalewski. And one thing that Van Foreest said that was interesting to me is he said, with the two rooks, this will be hard for white. And it's an interesting comment because if we took a pair of rooks off, and as just to remind everyone, the pawn on b6 is dead. The pawn on b6 is just a distraction. Big Mick can come and take that whenever he wants. But what Lucas was meaning was, well, okay, with the one rook on, then it would be probably a fairly easy, well, be a fairly easy hold for white. But with 2 rooks on, it just gives black more possibilities to do stuff. But still, we got to ask, well, what exactly is it that you want to do? Because it's not even so clear like what the threat is. Imagine the b6 pawn is gone. How do you actually create a threat? And you know, Big Mick, he'll come up with something. I faced this guy. You think you're out of the trouble, and he'll keep coming. So, and already we've seen that in this game. Position several, 10 moves ago, I don't think anyone would have guessed that it would look this bad for white. So a key matchup that we'll continue looking at.
Would it behoove Victor to play g5 at some point?
You could play g5, and then what? g4, I guess, is your dream, right?
Right.
At some point, we might do that. I think there's an interesting game of cat and mouse going on with this rook here. For example, like rook e6 would be a kind of a normal Lishamuki move. Maybe let's just put that on the board to think about it. And I'm sure it's playable, but I think he's worried about Victor's rook coming back to c3. And you see, it's kind of hard to move, right? If you say move this rook, then this is check to the miserable king, and then that's really annoying, right? And we're still going to maybe do that rook check. b7 was played, so basically Andriazian is saying, Big Mick, I want you to dislocate your b2 rook away from my king. And maybe even he's dreaming of some kind of counterplay after Big Mick takes the thing. Of course, Big Mick, the pawn is still a spectator in this position. There's no rush for us to actually go and take it. One reason to maybe actually take it, though, is if you don't do it right away and you just play some other move, white could play rook e7, and then at some point you really will have to take it. And then we're going to go into that rook endgame with just rooks instead of 2 rooks. So let's say rook b7. The question white should be asking himself is, what is the danger? Right? What is the danger? And your move of some kind of g5, g4 at some point is probably the most dangerous thing that white has to worry about. But maybe even like an f4, f3 with a check coming on g5 situation, that might be an example of something terrible that might happen to you. Even that, I'm not sure that really does anything. It's hard for the black king to get involved, right? It's hard for him to get involved. Yeah, so we'll come back and look at that. And that's our last game in Group B.
I've got the chat open now.
You got the chat open.
The YouTube chat open,
right.
Finally. And Marcine wants to know, how is Daros Spirits doing?
That's
wants
a
to know
good
if we can
question.
look at that game.
Good question. We're just looking at that. And it's been a real slugfest. I'm sure Daro feels like he should have won long ago. But here we are. White has survived to at least this point. And black is definitely still has some practical chances. The bishops of opposite color simply mean that the initiative now is going to be a bigger deal. If the queens came off, then you really would have the classical bishops of opposite color like draw cliche going on. It wouldn't be that hard. But here, there's, mating attempts for black, and black needs to both give white some grief and secure his own king, right, from checks. For example, if you played king g5, some kind of check on g8 is probably just going to end in it's just going to create an immediate draw because we trade everything off. White has to worry about queen g1 check, for example. But let's just see on example, queen g1 check, king h3. This queen is very well centralized, hitting this nice square here, which is going to make it difficult for black to do anything. And of course, if the white queen strays too far, queen f5 is obviously on the agenda. So this is Daro's big moment to see if he can find some kind of trickiness in the position. Maybe Maybe he can, yeah. It is going to be tough, though. It seems like white always has enough for harassment of the black king. Maybe a nice idea could be check to the miserable king, king g2, and then a move like c6. So I'm protecting this square, so there's no check there. And the idea of c6 is that I might want to bring the bishop back. So, just for kicks, let me just show check to the miserable king. If king h2, I have the option now of bishop b8. It's like another option that I have for myself that would just be useful. So that's my first instinct, though I'm sure Daro's really thinking about it now. They're out of time pressure. And so, yeah, I thank the caller for the question because, yeah, I think there's a little bit of massage left that might be technically drawn, but this is going to be some massage material right here. Sasi's game.
Yeah, this is very important. Keep in mind, if Sasi doesn't score better than Quesada does, then Quesada wins the field today. Mm-hmm. The way it's going right now, it looks like Quesada is going to win the field today. It looks like both games might be headed to draws. Am I correct in saying that? What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, I still believe that Sam has a nice position. But in this position here, this looks like it's hard to imagine this not being a draw, because Melkumyan can at any point play f4, cut the bishop from the pawn, and then snip the thing. Now, maybe there's some practical chances in a move like bishop c5, but even that I don't believe. Like, I think I can just take the thing even. Like take, because I run this guy. And you have to come, and then I take this, and, we're on to that journey. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe even that's a little complicated. But those are the kinds of things that they're thinking about now. It seems to me like Melkumyan can hold this should be able to hold this without too much grief. Because imagine, even if on bishop c5 you have to go back, still it's really hard to imagine how you're ever going to win this thing. If you have to babysit the pawn from this side, you just control so much fewer squares than you did from the other side. Right, where you're going to get knocked off of with f4 soon. But that's what they're thinking about. Let's take a look at that game that we were just referencing, the Quesada game, and look at how it went down. So knight a4, bishop c4, and knight c5 was definitely a thing. But one thing about this is you can get the knight to c5, I think, without too much trouble. Knight b2 happens. Notice that it's impossible for Quesada to dominate the knight because the unfortunate a4 actually traps the bishop. And what's nice to understand about that tactic is that the pawns on a6 and c6 aren't really black's friend, because they are blocking the bishop from coming back, and they are overdoing it on the light squares. And what I mean by that overdoing it is that if we can put like a knight here, which would prevent, or somewhere where it would prevent the king from coming over, we own those dark squares coming into the c5 square. So bishop d5 happened, and yeah, very pleasant position for Samuel to do things like knight d1, e3, or some kind of, he's looking for some kind of maneuver like that, where a lot of nice maneuvers. Another one to think about is the simple knight d3. That would be for sure a good practical move where you have to worry again about knight c5, but also this knight e5 thing. And as I said, the idea is put the knight on some square where it prevents this king from coming in, and we then bring our guy in. So very unpleasant for black. Now, my co-commentator sometimes looks at the computer evaluation. I never look. Maybe before the game I glance just by accident or whatever, but I never look. And I took by his tone, he was like, oh, it's headed for a draw. So maybe he knows the computer's saying it's a draw. But that would honestly be misleading, because even if the computer said that, from a human standpoint, this is still black is the one who can make an error here. I don't think white can ever lose this. Raise game. Let's see if Modulev was able to come up with something against rook d6. He played rook e5, so this stops our knight f5 move, and Robeson plays king f7. So let's ask an obvious question. What would happen after rook g5? I'm assuming, see, on rook e7 there's an unfortunate problem, and his name is rook g7, king, and knight f5. So, rook e5 is a good resource, but what are we going to do after rook takes g5? Well, there's a simple way out of it, and that is to play... No, there isn't. I was going to say king f6 is a simple way out of it, but he just plays rook g7. Hello. That doesn't work. So, rook g5 has not yet been played. This is our question here about how Robeson will continue. I believe very much in black's position, so I'm sure he's able to find something here. Knight e6 is maybe something that Modulev is worried about on not taking on g5 immediately. That looks annoying anyway. Yeah, that looks kind of annoying. I don't know. That has been our pin and win strategy for quite some time here, honestly, right? So Modulev's thinking about it, and it still looks like Robeson is the one. As you said, you'd rather be black here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see that, though, when you're playing a strong player, then they play rook e5, and then you start thinking to yourself, yeah, maybe I'm not a genius, Maybe I'm not the the next boy wonder. It's happened to all of us. Okay, so Sam put his knight on d3, king f5. All right, so here's some interesting problems for Sam to solve. We would love to play king e3, but if we do, king g4 is just going to come right back at us.
Hold on,
Yeah?
let's get the moves back up on the screen. There we go.
Oh, yeah. So I was just talking. Knight d3 is on the board, then king f5. And if king e3, which we'd like to do, the problem is king g4. So that's the potential counterplay that Sevian has to somehow take care of before his king goes on a journey. And he also doesn't really want the king to come in. So, for example, knight c5 is an obvious thought. Pawn must be defended. And let's see if we can work some magic here. Let's try... Okay, knight c5 did happen. I'm assuming bishop c4 is going to come. And king e3. Let's just try it out. I don't think it actually works here, but let's just try it out. This might be instructed. King g4. And... yeah, it's not so easy. For example, king d4 and just even bishop e1, e2, or f1. And there's no easy way for the king to come back. Now, I did correctly predict some stuff. White did play king e3, and one cool thing about king e3 is you don't necessarily have to calculate king g4, king d4 yet, because what you do know is that on king g4 you can always go back to f2. And Quesada's the guy who's got to figure out if there's some trick with king g4, king d4. My sense is that there isn't, but I'm not quite sure about that. Another thing that White can always do if he wants is he can improve the position of his pawns to like a4, a5. Let's go ahead and look to see if there's magic after king g4. And what I mean by magic is if we can, say, run the bishop out of squares on that diagonal in some way, right? Or create some forking potential with the poor king. If it is possible, it's definitely not easy. Let's try knight e4. Here's a nice variation, is that if f5, knight d6, just for kicks, let me show king g3, knight f5, king g4. This would be precisely the situation that I think is going to be lost for White, because our king is going to be better, and the our king is invading, is invading over here, and it should be lost.
Well, is that the best path for black? I mean,
No, it isn't. I'm just showing as
Sure.
an example. If we can get, so what it shows kind of is if we can keep the king on the king's side plus win the f pawn, this is kind of what we're aiming for, right? So let's go king e3 is the position, and Quesada's wondering about king g4. It's hard for black because he has another option. He can think about king e5. And honestly, maybe that's the most sensible. But remember, the idea for black would be, well, if I play king g4 and he has to play king f2, then it's looking pretty drosh right away, right? So let's look again at king g4. I said knight e4. Yeah, this is, and so an example of trickery would be on bishop d5. Well, unfortunately for white, this does not win. This endgame does not win with knight takes because it's black who's coming and black who's coming with a check. So that doesn't work. So if we play, if king g4, knight e4, we need a solution to bishop d5. Here's a nasty trick. Here, and a4. No, that's not a nasty trick. I was thinking I played b5. Worst case scenario, black just takes it all. So that's not it. But yeah, so actually it's close. It's real close. In addition, though, what I guess the other question is like, well, what would the other move besides knight e4 be if black chooses king g4? This is some of the things that Quesada is thinking about right now. One bummer for white is that on knight d7, king g3, knight e5, bishop d5 does hold everything intact. But you can feel, right, that this knight is dreaming of some really delicate maneuvers if king g4. Some really dangerous stuff could happen. Let's look again at knight e4. By the way, some people find this kind of stuff really boring, but once you cross h40, this is all you got left. This is the dream.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, it's a good time. In addition, maybe it's, as we were saying with Lucas van Foreest, it's a luxury question because maybe black could also play king e5. But there's really no luxury for this for black because he's going to suffer in both ways. If king e5, I don't have to worry about the g-pawn anymore. And, the knight, what the knight can do with the king is really shove him out of certain squares. So I should be able to shove you out of king e5, and then you have to worry about king d4. King g4 did happen. Let me just show a problem with king e5. For example, knight d7. If king d5, knight b6 loses, that's some magic. And if king d6, I'm going to assume king d4 wins. That's got to be winning. For example, snip, 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 and I'm going to run you out of moves. Right? Because I don't even have to do pawn moves. I can do moves like king d4, and then I'm coming in. Yeah. So king g4 happened, and now it's Samuel's big moment to calculate whether he can find a way to make a move like knight e4 work, or if he's just going to go back. It doesn't necessarily mean the game's over if he goes back. I assume, king f5 might be the best move anyway, but like for example, you could play this position and now try king f3 and then try your luck that way, because anytime he plays bishop d5, he's going to have to go back to babysit the pawn, right? So one intention for black might be to say, well, I'm just going to trade everything off with f5, but actually I think that's terrible because now knight d7, f4 will lose to knight e5, right? The knight is a tricky piece. So the good news for Savion is king f2 even though it looks like not a very forceful move, it still very much holds chances to win this game. And then, you get the luxury of also thinking about knight e4 or some other tricky business. Yeah. All right, let's see if Robeson cracked him.
And I want to let you all know that we are staying overtime today. Typically, now is the time when we would end our abbreviated broadcast, but because there is a potential game or field clinching situation in Group A, we are going to stay on until we have a resolution.
Right, and right here it looks like, well, Robeson definitely is for choice here. The e7 pawn is going to fall, and Robeson has a variety of different ways to making that happen. And he might even be interested in bigger fish than this pawn on e7, because that knight is still pinned, and it's not so easy to get out of it. One variation, for example, is pawn takes. Let's just call this the pawn greed variation. Rook takes, and luckily for black, there's no knight f5 check, because our knight is doing at least one job there. This would allow white to break the pin, but so what? You're just going to come over. So rook e7, we don't have to really worry. This would be a way to play for Robeson that's free of any worry. The intention of Modulev, I assume, is actually this. Snip, snip, and now king e5. So there's no nasty check, and you can't intensify the pressure on my knight because now I have knight f5. This is actually, it seems like good counterplay, at least on first glance, because we're threatening things like rook g1. Of course, black could play rook g6 and make the game go longer. So let's call that the default that Robeson can go to, like the minimum he can get. And this is a position he's just wondering if he can get more than that in this position. Yeah, if there's something more special than that continuation.
All right. One of the games we haven't looked at in a while, let's see if there's anything in Group B's final game of the day between Andreasen and Big Mick.
Sure.
The last time we looked at it, we were like, well, what is Big Mick's plan here?
Yeah.
Have things changed for you? Well, my move wasn't played, but the king is advancing on black's side.
Well, let's say the obvious thing that's happened is that the rooks have been traded, and in general, the 3 versus 2 is never going to be a win, and I don't even see how Big Mick can make life rough here for black. I assume he's going to try something now like king f4 and g5, g4. But even if I give you all those moves, you still haven't done it yet, right? But okay, yeah, Big Mick's gonna make a go of it. Yeah. It is unfortunately for Big Mick. There's just not enough juice to make this really dangerous, I think. But we'll keep an eye, because Big Mick, he'll hurt you. He'll come at you, and you can see he's still pressing and pressing here. So in Group A, we have a couple games left. Sasi is trying to make this work. Now, I left it, and maybe I was wrong when I said that black had an easy draw, but let's just take a look at how this went. So it was king h7, I believe, king c4, bishop e3, bishop c5, bishop g3, and bishop f8. So because f4 was a problem, the bishop has to go babysit the pawn on the other side. But the general grief about that is that the bishop has far less scope, right? It can only go between f8 and g7 the whole while. And what does white need to do? He'd love to win the pawn on c6, but the problem is that bishop e1 is there. Let's figure this out, actually. So bishop e1, what would happen if king c5? This is kind of interesting. think what would happen is f4, snip, f3, bishop c5, bishop b4. That looks like the general problem that black's facing.
And of course, the white bishop could not take the black one because then the f pawn is promoting in that situation.
And so in this position after bishop e1, Sasi played king d4, presumably to guard against just that. But let's just check that variation again because it might help us understand what's going on. If f4, the danger is you're going to lose that pawn. But imagine like, no, this is not true. You're going to run to the border here, right? You're running to the border. Yeah, no way you're going to win this now, right? I just hang out. And the bishop, if it moves away, I snip the pawn. For example, bishop c5, snip, snip, and snap. All over. So king d4 was attempted. And I suppose the dream is to play king e5. Yeah, okay, it's a good dream. Sasi just says, okay, king g8, what do you got? Bishop d6, and now the easy move to play is king h7 back, because the bishop is babysitting both the b4 and the h6 pawn, right? So he's got to play to f8. He would love to be back here again, but unfortunately there's no real way to do it. Oh, I just like those arrows. Look at that. Isn't that nice?
Live arrow right
Live
there.
arrow.
How about that?
Svirts and Shimonov, something interesting happened here. I don't think I understand it. Let's see. It went, so this is where we left it. He said, check to the miserable king, king h1, and now this very tricky looking move, bishop c5. Well, I like it. I think I like it. I think I understand it. So before we look at the tactics, the idea is similar to d6, to my move c6, only that now he would like to put the bishop, have the option to put the bishop here so that we have this diagonal. Now, the obvious question, which I'm sure Shimonov is now pondering, is what happens if I just take this guy, right? And you're going to lose the bishop either to queen h3 or to queen d1. And there's going to be questions about what it then looks like. So let's just, there might be better than queen d1, but let's just put that on the board. Might be better, we might change our minds about g2, but let's put that on the board too. Let's say check, and just pretend he has to go back. Queen c7, right, and then it's pretty nasty. You check and you pick up this pawn, and as long as there is no perpetual check from white in these kinds of endings, the pass pawn is totally brutal in the queen and pawn, the queen endings. You know, it's funny, a lot of people have this notion of most endings being kind of drawish, and that comes from rook endings, which we have more rook endings than anything else. But queen endings are vicious. They are absolutely vicious. Who has the centralized queen and who has the pass pawn? The pass pawn is what the queen endings are made of. You can have a lot of extra pawns, but just one extra pass pawn in the queen ending is usually what decides it. So bishop c5, a very nice move, at least a very creative attempt by Darrow to create some drama here. And queen h3 mate is the threat.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. If you play king h2, I think we're going to also say that this is grief. Let's just look at it for a second. Bishop d6, king h1, check to the miserable king. And on king g1, I think there's several moves, but just imagine I can force you back into the bishop. I can force you to take it this time with bishop c5. So, nice move from Darrow. I don't see any clean way for Shimonov to, or let's call it, I don't see any path for clean equality for Shimonov here. This is suffering. All right, now, let's look at what happened. I love this position. So, king g4, king f2, king f5, and now the simple a4. We thought that might be coming. King e5, king e3. Well, I think, well, here it is. We've achieved something. You know, we've got it, and we're coming on with a4. A4 is not only closer to the other side of the board, but a lot of times when we're going to try to attempt to run the bishop out of squares, it's nice to control b5. So as predicted, I think this is rough. I think it is now getting concrete, and the simple threat on the board now is knight d7, where the king is going to be kicked out of dodge, really. Like, let me just put on f6. f6 is not a good move, but let's just pretend white can't take it either, right? King d5 loses knight b6, right? And king d6 will allow me to play a move like knight b6, and all I need is for the bishop to move for me to have the time to bring my king in, right? In the game, king d5 was played. Okay, so the natural question is, does knight d7 do it? Does knight d7 do it? And maybe bishop b3 is what Quesada is counting on. It looks real dangerous, real dangerous. Knight b6, king e5, and let's head on over. There's more than one way for white to play, but you know, these simple variations show how difficult it is for the guy. Let's look at this again. Ben, why don't you play a move or two for let's think about it. So the idea of king d5 would be like, maybe we move this bishop and then play king c4. Now, if I leave the knight, and also, is black threatening a5?
If you're black, do you want to, in a perfect world, would it work for you to get white to push the a pawn to the 5th rank, if possible? Would you want that?
You probably do, yeah. Samuel plays knight d7, right? And that's the most natural move. It looks good. Bishop b3 is interesting because it feels like maybe we're going to get a little counterplay, right? There's more than one move for white, though. Like, I don't even have to play knight b6. Maybe that's best, but I could also do king d3, because if you take, I assume I'm winning this one. Yeah. It might get a little complicated over here, but no, I don't think it will be. I don't think it will be. Our knight's going to do the dance. He's going to mop it up and go home.
Could Sam, if you go back a few moves, where bishop b3, are we at a situation where white could ignore the threat on a4 and push b5?
b5?
Yeah.
But b5 allows black to trade it all off. You mean a5, right? No,
I meant b5. Yeah, I was thinking incorrectly.
a5 right now, the bummer is, it's a reasonable move to think about, but king c4 looks like too much counterplay. In fact, then we might be lost. But I'm sure we can have something here. So, in fact, something different happened, and we got bishop f1, a similar idea, which is to allow the king in. Savian plays knight b6 check, and I'm going to guess king e5 is our only move. So, as I said before, the knight is really good at knocking, that king e5 happened, is good at knocking the king off the squares. And now we need really a way for this king to come over to c5. And we can see now Quesada's idea is that he can hold off the king and keep the bishop on the diagonal. So imagine there's not that many squares on the diagonal for the bishop, right? There's not that many squares, so you have to wonder about, the potential problems of getting kicked off. not so easy for white to do it, but I'm just saying as a dream for white to get him off the diagonal. Okay, king f2 was played. Now this might just be a way of winning time, because after bishop d3, the only square on the diagonal, we can come back, and then you're going to go back. 15 minutes. It's funny. It sounds like a lot, but in these positions, which imagine you've done a lot of endgame studies in your life and you enjoy them, kind of like I do. My experience in these positions is you are going to, in order to win, you are going to have to solve several endgame studies, right? Because Quesada is going to be able to present multiple problems to you, and then you have to solve them. In a way, we've already solved one. We got the king off of our g3 pawn, right? But now we have a different one to solve, which is getting the king out of e5. Yeah. So I assume, yeah, I don't know what else besides bishop d3 is going to come. He's thinking hard about it. That guy's a fighter, man. Look at him.
Absolutely.
I like this webcam stuff. I like that. It was not a webcam, just the cam. Seeing the guy's body language.
Yeah,
and stuff.
it adds a completely different component to the gameplay we're seeing. Let's, while we are watching the end moments of the important games of this round, let's take a small break, and we'll come back and finish up the show.
All right, sounds good.
All right, we will be back in just a few moments here with the 2018 Winter Chess Classic Round 8.
When you visit St. Louis, you'll probably want to watch the Cardinals or the Blues. What about after the game? Heading back to the hotel would be a major error. Instead, boogie through the city and discover the music that gave the Blues their name at the National Blues Museum, Broadway Oyster Bar, or even the legendary Blueberry Hill. So whether you love the Cardinals, the Blues, or the Blues, come play with us. And you guys know I can't play this, right? St. Lou is always exploring.
A question on Twitter from Damas. I should not have pronounced that. That was a bit of a trap, yeah?
For those of you who are new to chess, it might look like ba3 is an illegal move here, because white advances pawn 2 squares, not 1. But it's still something we call en passant. And you can do that, but you have to do it instantly. You can't wait for a move, like let's say play king e7, king g2, and now try, because could I do it?
I'm sorry. This is too funny for words.
This is a software glitch? I'm pretty sure there's not a lot.
Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence. Yeah, I'll play 4 against Lawrence. And now he's going to play something against me which we discussed at length during the course of my stay. Yeah, he told me this is excellent. d5, this was what I was kind of hoping for, because now I think e5 is quite strong. No, Lawrence, this is not how chess works. Sadly, it would be much, much more fun if chess actually worked like this. But I don't think it does. Or maybe it does. Well, that's me regretting what I just said. How did I get from there to here is a little bit beyond me. And what's worse, I will never hear the end of it. My quality of life has just gone downhill tremendously, because I'm actually sharing the office with the guy.
Be surprised, be intrigued, be delighted. The World Chess Hall of Fame in St. Louis is nothing you'd expect and everything you love. 3 galleries highlight the history, culture, and creativity behind the game. Explore chess in ways you never imagined. It's a one-of-a-kind cultural institution where rare artifacts and world-class art play together. The World Chess Hall of Fame. Mind, art, experience.
You may have heard about St. Louis's world-class museums. Art, history, science, even magic. But you may not know we have an entire museum dedicated to play, with a 10-story slide and a Ferris wheel on top. Don't let all this family fun slide by you. Whose kids are these? St. Lou is always exploring. Anybody?
I don't know. I just have a love for the city, and I've always had a love for chess. I mean, it's addictive, and people study it. They can see it's an unbelievable preciseness and beauty to the things that occur on the chessboard.
I want to wish you congratulations, happy birthday, 10th anniversary, and wishing you another happy 10 years to come.
Happy 10th anniversary to the St. Louis Chess Club and Scholastic Center. May there be many more.
I want to congratulate the Chess Club of St. Louis on 10 years and hopefully many more and a very bright future and a lot of success ahead.
Thanks for a great first 10 years, and I hope I'll continue to be playing here for the next 10 years and a couple more decades after that.
I think that without the St. Louis Chess Club, chess in the United States won't really be the same.
I would like to say thank you to Jeannie and Rex for all they've done. The sort of generosity of spirit they have is something special, and I'm very grateful to them.
It would not be an exaggeration to say that the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis changed my life, and I'm very grateful for everything it's done for me and for chess here in the U.S. and around the world.
It's been a wonderful ride. You've done so much for chess. Thank you so much. I'm eminently grateful for what you've done for this game, and we're looking forward to the next 10 years.
And I wish everyone to continue having this amazing fun for the next, I don't know, century or so. All right.
I'm really thankful to everyone here who has helped me at the club, Tony Rich, Joy Bray, and of course Rex and Jeannie Singfield. So many great events have happened over these past 10 years that I've been involved in, and I'm looking forward to everything that will happen in the next 10 years as well. So, to the future.
Welcome back to overtime of the 2018 Winter Chess Classic. Ben Simon and Grandmaster Jesse Kraai here in the Studio B, and we think we have a decision in Group A, and we have a champion. And I don't know that the relay of the moves is or the relay of the result is correct in one of the games, but I want to start first of all with Quesada's game with Sevian.
Right.
And that is over. That is a draw.
Right, and basically, you know, Sevian decided, no, I can't do anything in this position. Bummer, I would have pushed harder. But like I said, maybe my whole dreams the whole time, and you probably read something on the computer said it was just equal. But anyways, they might also, I'll be interested, I'll go up there and see what they say in the postmortem, and maybe Quesada, I suspect Quesada will be like, it was drawn the whole time. Mm-hmm. So we'll see about that. And it looks like he has secured first place with that draw, because in the other game where he might have got caught is Krishnan against Melkumyan, total draw in this position, and they have agreed to that draw.
Now this game actually just ended mere seconds ago, and this was the one that clinched it for Quesada. Due to time constraints, I think we should interview Yunieski Quesada, give him his champions interview tomorrow.
Okay.
With championship final round day. But congratulations to Quesada. With this draw, Sasi is not in contention anymore to finish in or tie in first, and so that gives the Cuban the victory.
Right.
Okay, so that's going to do it for today, Jesse.
Great.
And I'd like to thank all of you for watching, and finally we got into the chat and we're able to answer a question. So join us tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow we are beginning early. 11 a.m. Central is whenever the first moves are played. We'll be on the air 2.5 hours later. And hopefully, the Group B champion hasn't been decided by then, so we can have some excitement on the air. But you never know. It could be decided early. So visit uschesschamps.com starting at 11 a.m. Hey, World Championship Game 4, the Winter Chess Classic final day, it's going to be a big day on U.S. Chess Champs. There's not going to be any shortage of chess, to be certain. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 1:30 p.m., the start of our show. And, of course, the World Championship show beginning at 11 a.m. Central Time, 2 hours after they make the first move in London. This show was presented by the world's greatest production B team. Tammy Hyde was the streamer. Isaac Schranz, graphics and audio. Danny Machuca, the technical director. I want to thank Jonathan Schranz for his help over the weekend, and for Grandmaster Jesse Kraai. My name is Ben Simon, Until tomorrow, we say so long from the Show Me State.
Bye-bye.
This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.